destination. Darkness is quite near your feet and senses through your ears. And tide is rising, drought is non-existent. Sins are washed away, all the faults that you were facing. Sunset chaser, where's your new location? Searching for a purpose, the truth is making you nervous. And sunlight's waiting, there's a happy ending. Picture perfect skies, does your life have any meaning? Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you. Daylight saver till the next adventure. Love is all around, but you're focused on your frowning. Rays are burning, achy luminescence, feeling through the gloom, tense and patient for its blooming. Oh darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you. Darling, don't you cry no more, as the sun will soon shine 1,000 times. Don't you worry, dear, dark clouds will soon clear for you.
Aloha. Hello, my name is Anderson Lay. I'm the Artistic Director for the Hawaii International Film Festival. And thanks for coming to this free discussion. It's one of our HIFF talks for the Panthers TV series out of New Zealand. This is a really fun panel to talk about the kind of historic impact of this series and the subject matter. And we're very proud to have several of the creators here as part of the panel. I'd like to introduce the showrunners and executive producers, Tom, Hern, and Nua Finau. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Awesome, thank you, man. Thank you so much for having us. Such an honor to have the show in your festival. So,
yeah, thank you very much. And also, we have one of the directors, Miki Magasiva, who we had earlier talk in another panel. How's it going, man?
Good to see you again, Anderson. Mahalo. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, thank you very much. And I think we had one more director who's supposed to join us. Hopefully, she joins us, Vea Mafile'o, who is we've shown several of her films in our festival in the past. So hopefully, she comes on board as well. So, okay, so basically,
she literally just messaged. She's jumping on now.
Oh, fantastic! Fashionably late. That's awesome. So really quickly. So we're going to just talk story about the making of the series and the production of it, but then we're going to have it open to the audience, who can basically ask their questions to this team, and they can do so by just leaving a comment on our Facebook live video or YouTube, or also on Cinesen. We're streaming on 3 platforms right now, so and we'll do that at probably 15 minutes before we end. So before we start, I want to thank Pacific Islanders and Communication and Niatero for sponsoring our Pacific Showcase, an Indigenous lens, and really the Panthers are really kind of the kind of our impetus to really kind of launch our first series section for the festival. As especially nowadays in the world of streaming, like Netflix or Amazon, what have you, the idea of a movie or film is changing. TV is no longer kind of relegated into a quote unquote ghetto. It's now a premium. It's premium productions now, right? You have you want to, especially for a story as with a lot of breadth like the Panthers, you want to have time to explore these various storylines into essentially a 10-hour movie or something, versus just encapsulating it into a 2-hour movie and basically cutting it down to its bare bones. So Tom and Nua, let's talk about how how you kind of started off with the inception of the story and how you decided to make it into a television series.
Yeah, well, it actually started, I remember quite vividly, of Will Ilolahio, one of the creators of the founders of the Polynesian Panthers movement, actually called me up back. This is 5-6 years ago. I remember it very clearly, and he was telling me that he had just seen our movie, The Dark Horse, which starring Cliff Curtis, and he loved the film and really wanted to talk to us about helping bring his story and the Panthers story to the screen. I later found out in very much Will fashion, that he hadn't actually seen the movie, The Dark Horse, and also that I think we were maybe the 5th producers that he had tried to take his story to. But eventually he found a home with us, and but honestly, immediately from hearing Will's story, it was just so clear that it was exceptionally cinematic, and even as you were talking about in your intro, Anderson, that his character is such a filmic character, almost Shakespearean in a way, just how kind of crazy some of aspects of his life has been. And then, just hearing about the Panthers and what they had achieved as well. So many of us here in Aotearoa hadn't learned about how the Panthers had changed kind of the face of our country and our history. So it was just immediately a no-brainer, to be honest. We get approached with a lot of stories, and sometimes we have to kind of think about it and scratch around and try and find the story. With this one, I immediately knew that it was something special. and it took many years of development. What I would say is that the project really took off when Halaifonua, when Noah and Crystal Vainga joined the team. The project really got a different momentum, and it was through mine and Noah's collaboration that we were able to find an exciting creative direction forward for the project.
Hi, Vea. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. I'm so sorry, Tongan time.
That's okay. That's okay. So
You're late.
Noah, yeah. So Noah, like, can you maybe expand on what Tom was talking about? Your partnership, and how was that? What was the spark that kind of got the project moving forward?
Yeah, I guess I heard about the project through the grapevine. Like, New Zealand film industry is very small, and then the kind of Polynesian film industry is even smaller within Aotearoa. So kind of there were murmurs around, and I knew that I had to be a part of it. Like Tom said, it was a no-brainer of a story. So I just slid into his DMs and just pretty much stalked him and was like, bro, if you want this to be me, you need me on it. But no, I was really glad that when we linked up and we kind of brainstormed our first like ideas about how I saw the story, how he saw the story, and how we could bring it to life, we were pretty much singing from the same song sheet very early on in the collaboration, and it all happened pretty organically and very quickly, that the world was created and we started to see what we had here, because it's obviously a very big part of our history here in Aotearoa. And like most probably indigenous communities around the world, that these kinds of histories and stories of our people aren't really told. So it was a cool collaboration that happened pretty quickly, and we vibed like easily. So it wasn't like, it was very special, to be honest, like, because it didn't really, I don't feel like those kind of creative collaborations happen often, or especially with first-time workers. Like, normally, you need to get a track record on to get that short-form, shorthand communication and singing from the same song sheet. So very, very lucky that it just happened.
Right. So, I mean, talking about like the when you're framing the story and whatnot, did you always envision it as a series or as a movie at first?
I think pretty early on, even for us, in those early days, it was a series. That Will had been imagining it as a film, but yeah, for us it was a series. It was just at the start of that, this latest sort of wave and movement of such great television, and for all of those reasons that you were talking about in your intro, Anderson, I was very excited about turning it into TV, and I'd never actually worked on TV. I'm a film guy, came from a film background. But man, that's been such an enjoyable process, like just writing and creating for TV, just having those longer arcs for character journeys and things. It's really fun. You can really take these characters on a winding road. So yeah, I think that was the right decision.
Yeah, okay. No, that's very cool. So how about like crafting the story? I mean, also when Will Ilolahia, like, how do you, I mean, like, I mean, it's his life story, but was it also based on a book? Did he write a book first, or what was or was it just basically him rattling off his story and just kind of like framing it into a narrative structure?
Most of it was many sessions of Will telling us stories, actually. Just hanging out and just hearing his stories, and some of them were just like, it's that classic thing, like, where fact is stranger than fiction. And so often the actual real things that happened, people think those are the things that we made up in the show, but they're true. Will and all the rest of the Panthers really did live extremely colorful lives, for him to go, to live as a street gangster, but also as like a university student and graduate. And, his dad really was butler to the Governor General. He's moved in so many sprawling different circles, the same with Dr. Melania Nye, like such an incredible, epic life that she's lived. So yeah, mainly it was just hanging out with those guys. And we did a lot of that and a lot of interviewing often we'd record the interviews just so that we could cross-reference them later. But that was, and a bunch of historical reading and research as well.
So was it like I think like Tom, you talked about you're the film guy, and then you're an actor, and then you also became and also very like a very busy producer. I mean, aside from the Dark Horse, you also produced Shadow in the Cloud, which we showed last year, and Guns Akimbo, like all these great genre films. And Nua, I think you're the TV. You had the more of the TV background. I think you produced a show called Jonah, right? So, which is so was that kind of a good marriage to kind of like basically kind of bring that TV structure to the story?
Yeah, I think I'm still new to the game of TV as well. Like Jonah, and that was the first kind of thing that I'd done. But I was on there as a writer, so we were both pretty much just went beyond the reef and looked to the stars and said, "Hey, please, let's just find the land. Let's find the promised land."
Right.
So, and it was pretty much that we all. I think that's what was that was a strength of ours as well, was that kind of blind naivety of just like, no, we knew that we had something special, and we surrounded ourselves with winners like Miki, Vea. All of us were kind of all sort of new to this space in our own way. And that kind of excited energy is pretty much what pushed us through, because it is a show in New Zealand, by New Zealand standards, has never been done kind of before to this level and this scale. So I guess if we were more experienced, we'd be like, well, that's not how we did it last time, or that's not how we've done it on previous projects or something.
Right.
But because it didn't really have that, it was like, well, we're going to just pave a new way. And I don't think I was ever worried. I kind of always had faith that I knew that I knew we had the right people in the right positions to make sure that we did the story justice. So, yeah.
And like, I mean, this is so like, let's talk about the production process of it, because it is a period piece, right? So how do you, I mean, work with like the various department heads and like trying to make it as accurate as possible, not make it anachronistic, like it's like, can you talk about that? Were you guys very like stringent regarding that, or like and how do you shoot like because I'm sure the locations that you shot at were very modernized, and how do you frame it to kind of have that period kind of feel and make it accurate?
Miki, that's probably a good one for you, brother. Miki was the setup director who directed the first 2 episodes, and we had a lot of conversations in prep about that topic.
Yeah, it was a difficult thing because if you've ever been to Auckland City before, you've seen that it looks quite different from what it used to. So anywhere you put the camera, it's really tricky to do a period piece with essentially environments that's different now. So in a lot of ways we were quite restricted. We had to be super clever with, obviously these are the things that you do anyway in filmmaking, but you have to be super clever with, how you plan to shoot it, and, those big swooping wides that you planned for. When Noah and Tom explained to you originally, they had to go straight out the window, and the wides, had to go on like 100, 150 mil, go real close. But no, I think it was, I think what it was we were all on the same page. We knew the parameters we were living in. Noah and Tom had a very strong idea stylistically of how they wanted to approach the show. And then, it was talking to the HODs about how we could achieve that. We had, Drew McGeorge, an amazing DOP, who came on board, and we had long discussions about, what lenses we'd use, when we could go wider, when we would mostly live closer. We'd spent long sessions going to locations and seeing, where we could look, how we would shoot these locations. And then, we had a great production designer, Jane Bucknell. She came on board as well, who created some really amazing sets for us. So it's just that film language, isn't it? You just have to patch everything together. But at the same time, that challenge was super exciting as well. one of the things that was cool with the boys was they were very keen to make it, you know, although it's a period piece, they wanted to make it stylistically contemporary in a lot of ways, you know, a little bit more hip. You would see that in the series with some of the creative decisions that we made for the show. So there was some, you know, there was exciting aspects to how we would treat the look of it, as well as trying to be true to the time and the place through locations and wardrobe. And yeah, I guess he's, you know, we also had a great stylist, wardrobe stylist, Sammy, who was, you know, just incredible at, you know, so I guess it was, you know, bringing the costume and it was a collaboration between everybody. And man, when you look at that sort of stuff, you know, it's just super fun when you've got all of those pieces and you've got all, even though you're restricted, it's really, really fun to try and, you know, work that jigsaw puzzle out and make a super cool show.
I mean, I you know, like the I love the fashion, the styles in the show, just because, well, you know, it wasn't like, it just seemed accurate to me. You know, they're very styling and profiling in the sense of it's very 70s, but like also it kind of it was authentic. It's reminding me of, like, you know, I grew up in Hawaii, so like I see a lot of this fashion, you know, like back in that same era, you know, like it's like so I thought it was really, really, really cool. I mean, really quickly before we go more into production, can you talk about you know, because again, like just from me, point of ignorance, like the history of the Dawn raids and how that kind of sparked, I guess, like the Polynesian Panther movement, but the history of Dawn raids in general.
Is it okay? Yep, I'll take the me. Well, the Dawn raids is, like I was saying before, is not really, we haven't really been taught our history here in Aotearoa, from a Polynesian sense of like being Polynesian and growing up in New Zealand and our kind of urban history. So I personally didn't know much about the Dawn raids or the Polynesian Panthers. And I grew up in Wellington, which is a total different city from Auckland, where this is all set. So kind of I was learning all of this as we were researching and writing the show. So for me, it was a real eye-opener and a little bit jarring as well to be like, dang, how come I don't know this? And then realizing like that these issues affected my own family. Like, you know, I had uncles and aunties, and my parents grew up, like they were here in that time. So it was a real shock to learn and discover that. And then when talking to my parents early on in the process, they didn't really want to engage in the conversation or talk about it to an extent. And then it wasn't until like I showed them our trailer that they saw it, that it was a little bit different. And they kind of, my mum said to me, oh, hopefully this makes us talk about the things we don't want to talk about. And I know just from talking with a lot of our other creatives and people just commenting and messaging that they spurred the discussions on with their parents or their uncles or grandparents, and we're all kind of learning about it now. Like it's like, personally, I didn't really know much about it, so it was pretty not cool to not know that such a disturbing part of our history wasn't taught to us in schools and stuff like that, but we know about the Romans,
right?
And
exactly.
you know, things like that.
I'd say who writes the textbooks, right? That's the basically, yeah. Like, so do you see, I mean, when the series was released, do you see it, I mean, what was the reaction maybe from social media, from young people, at least from young Polynesians or Maori, you know, like what was the reaction to when the series was released? What did you see? I mean, basically that question, like,
Yeah.
basically, I never knew this history, right? So
yeah, very, very, very much so. And it was pretty evident early on once we dropped our trailer. Like, I think we had like 500,000 views in the first day.
Wow.
Which is from a New Zealand scale, that's pretty out the gate. That's pretty unheard of. So it mobilized that young, or engaged with that young Pacific urban audience quite early on, and then the anticipation for the show just dropped when it came out. We were the highest streamed series on our TVNZ On Demand platform like ever, which was in the first week opening. So it showed the funders and the powers that be that there was a a hunger for this knowledge and for this information and these stories to be seen and told, which was quite validating for us because we knew what we were doing was special, and that it landed was even more special to know, like, man, the amount of tears and like sleepless nights that were put into making the show. Like, it was like, man, we did it. Like, we made a classic for New Zealand, and it hit the places that we wanted it to land. So it was awesome, man. That was testament to everyone that Miki mentioned and the people on this call.
Tom and Nua, was it? I mean, Tom, you earlier said it was like a very many years journey to get this project into fruition, made into reality. Was it a hard sell? Was it a hard sell? And
I think it was until it wasn't. And like, I just think like with certain projects, there's like a moment when the seas just kind of part, and when, you know, the higher power or the universe or whatever you believe in sort of decides that it's the time for that project. And it definitely felt like that. Like, this was the project on our slate that I most wanted to get made for 5 years, but was kind of banging my head against the wall, making very little progress. And then things in the external world changed and moved. You know, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement sort of brought about an awareness and an appetite from the global community to be a part of this discussion and to learn more about you know, politics and racism and all of these associated issues. So there was kind of like a bigger shift in the zeitgeist that I think helped set the table for the Panthers to be made. And then also it was the 50th anniversary of the foundation of the Polynesian Panthers in Aotearoa, which was the year that we, you know, made the show. And then unbeknownst to us, tying in with all of that, right around the time that we released the show, and we had no idea when we were making it, was the apology from the New Zealand government for their part in the Dawn raids. So yeah, there was a movement that was much bigger than us, and it did feel like that a lot during making this show, and that was quite humbling in a way. Like, I guess we all just brought our nous and our experience and our best efforts to serve this story, but it really had an energy of its own that's far greater than us. And I think that comes through in the final show as well.
I mean, for the directors, Vea, maybe you can chime in. I mean, working with the actors, I mean, for such a powerful story, you need to have a charismatic actor. So, and then Demetrius Schuster Koloa Matangi was fantastic. And, you know, like, I mean, he basically was just, you know, started off as very meek and geeky, and then became this powerful figure. How did you work with the actors and kind of convey that and make it, like, you know, like, again, this is a biopic, but at the same time, you need to have that, you know, him, like, basically the birth of a you know, a charismatic but powerful leader, political leader.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, this was the first kind of full-on role that Demetrius had ever taken. I think he'd had like maybe one line before on a show. So yeah, and so it was actually a bit of a gamble, I think, to play him, but he just kind of really grew into the character and did a lot of homework, did a lot of research, spent time with Will, and yeah, I mean, it's the same with Lani as well. She had never acted before, and she grew into her character. And I think as you watch along the series, they grow even more as they develop the characters, and not only like reflect who they're supposed to be playing, but bring their own special taste to their characters. So they were really, all of the actors were really great to work with on the show, actually. I think we were pretty blessed by that, guys?
So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to add to
that,
you know, like you do when you do anything, you know, Polynesian or Pacific, it's a real community that's involved in doing these productions. And, you know, Tom and Noah were able to bring an amazing team together for us to, you know, to all come together as a bit of a village to make this this production. And, you know, one of the people that we got on early was the lovely Annabella, and she became the acting coach for our young kids. And Annabella is a director in her own right, and has lots of experience with teaching young Pacific kids acting and what it is to be an actor. So we were super fortunate and super lucky to have her come on board, and she became a bit of an acting coach / mentor for Demetrius and Lani and Vila and Rokalani and all the other young cast members, and you know, they were able to form a little bit of a family together. So we owe a lot to her, really.
There was actually this really cool moment. I think it was Miki's idea actually during prep, where we took the young cast to see Annabella's one-woman play that she was performing at the time, her theater show. And man, they were just blown away. We're just like, she's such a boss, like just, you know, absolutely killing it on stage, this all on her own, you know, no props, no other cast. And I think like that just helped set the bar for them of you know, what was possible. And I think added another layer of respect for those young actors, for this veteran, you know, performer who was there to help and support them.
Miki, did you direct the first 2 episodes? I forgot. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, I directed the first 2. Tom and Vea directed the next 2 after that, and then we had Chris Graham and Mario direct the last 2.
Got it.
Yeah.
So like, you know, so you're setting the tone essentially for the series, right? For the first 2 episodes. Like, you know, and these like biopics, you know, like or like, you know, biographies, like you know, when you have like with Demetrius and, you know, and all these other, you know, actors, young actors, you know, sometimes when they're, you know, especially portraying a historic figure, some actors kind of they do a carbon copy, or they just do an impression. Some others just basically take it on their own and just have the essence of the character, and you know, like essence of the historical figure, and like maybe, and then run with it and craft their own kind of interpretation of that. What was your process in like, you know, basically leading these young actors to kind of portray these historic figures?
You just go to them, do exactly what I say, Anderson. That's what you do.
Okay.
You do it my way. That's how you do it. No, I think ours was a very organic process. You know, we you know, as we were talking about before, you know, we had a definitely a unique style to how we wanted to approach the story, and part of that style was, you know, the boys had made an early decision that it wasn't going to be true to life in every sense of that era. So, you know, there was a way that the people of that time and place spoke that was quite unique. It was a bit more proper to how we speak now, but you know, the boys were very keen to have, you know, how they called it, a swag to the show, you know, a contemporary swag to the show. It came through the wardrobe, it came through the music especially, but it also came through their performances. So we were keen to embrace just how they spoke today, but giving them the lines of the story as it was played in the past as well. And I think that was more so with the young talent, you know, the members of the Panthers party. You'll see that other actors and characters in the ensemble piece have taken a more traditional 70s approach to the way that they spoke in their characters. They were generally the older, whiter characters, I'd say, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But with our younger crew, we did allow them to, you know, kind of find their own way to a degree, and then just sort of nurtured them into the sort of tonal areas that we wanted to go to as a show.
I mean, there in your episodes, that I mean, you're essentially continuing the story. But what would you bring to the director's chair? What was your fingerprint, so to speak, your signature for your episodes?
Well, I was really interested in the women's issues, particularly the abortion, and so it was really important for me that those scenes be really raw, authentic, realistic. This is what we go through as women, and I really didn't want to gloss over it. And I know that it is hard to watch and it is confronting, but I really wanted it to be that way. And I think the other parts that I was really passionate about was working with Milani when she was at home and in that place of mourning with her mum. She has, in her own personal life, she has really similar background to her character. So it was it was hard. It was a hard shoot, but really what she brought was so honest and so genuine that I think it, I was really proud of how she really brought it that day. It was very long and hard, but yeah. So that I think that those things very much about the women that I was really keen on, and also making sure that we were as authentic as possible with the Tongan side of things. So, when we went to Will's house, that it looked like it would be a Tongan house, that everyone was in the right positions, they were singing the right songs. For me, that was very important to get right. And yeah. So, yeah.
Tom, you're going to say something, or you want to add anything?
No.
Okay. See okay. So, like, production-wise, like, how many days did you set aside for an episode to shoot?
What was it again?
I think
Noah?
it was. Well, we shot it. It was all kind of mixed up. So we were shooting like at 2 locations and everything. So it wasn't necessarily that we shot the first 2 episodes first, then the next ones. It was a little bit all over the Central Auckland. But I think we had 59 shoot days.
Okay.
And we gave kind of like 3 weeks per 2 episode block. That's kind of how we skinned it out. Didn't necessarily always work like that because
Right.
some places were not available and some places were. So some things we were shooting for episode 6 in the beginning of the shoot, and some things that we couldn't lock the first 2 episodes because we still had to shoot this particular actor who was in quarantine and wasn't available until the early new year, kind of thing. So it was a little bit all over the place, but it was roughly about 3 weeks per block and per 2 episode block and 59 shoot days all up.
It's pretty fast. Like, that's pretty radically fast, and it's like, for what you see on screen, it's also a pretty low budget show in the scope of things, and it doesn't look and feel like that, but it is. And that's a credit to Miki and Vea and the other directors and our whole team, really. But yeah, I guess, like, with that pace also comes a momentum, and an energy, and it sort of forces the directors and the crew to be brave and bold with how many shots they're able to shoot and how many takes they're able to shoot of each shot even. And yeah, there's an energy and aliveness that comes with that. I think, like, some of the greatest films ever have been, independent films have been made, with very few shoot days because their budgetary parameters. I think of something like Whiplash, I think it was shot in 18 days or something crazy. And you talk about a film with like drive and energy and momentum, and you can't help but think that the production process must have fed into the energy of the completed film. And I think there is a little bit of that in the Panthers. Maybe if we had more comforts, more time, we might not have had that same edge to the final product.
Yeah. So talk about, like, really quickly, so it premiered, it was broadcast this summer, right? In New Zealand, right? And then you had and then and it wasn't like a bingeable. It was actually released per week, each episode.
We actually had an interesting model where it was the first time ever for a New Zealand show on our platform that the whole show was dropped on the first day. So we actually had a dual release. We dropped the whole show on the first day, and then we had weekly drops on linear TV as well.
I see.
So yeah, our more linear audience could watch it that way, or you could binge it.
What I mean, just as a viewer, what do you guys prefer personally?
I'm definitely a binger, and it was interesting because having that dual release, like young people obviously binged it and they watched it straight away, but my parents, for example, watched it just weekly, so they just watched it regular, like a lot of people there
on regular TV, right? So, yeah.
They're just old school like that. But in saying that, I did have a few of my friends who were younger than me and young like me, who kept it old school and just watched it on TV.
Hey, just because you've had a shave, it doesn't mean you can call yourself young.
But it was quite lucky too, because we had just hit lockdown, hadn't we? So yeah, there was.
Hey, who's this guy? Hey, there he is, number one.
Yeah,
Mr. Kolo Matangi himself.
He's just getting changed. I'm in his trailer. He's a star now.
He's a star now, yeah.
Noah's actually on set of his next production, which Demetrius is co-starring in.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, can you talk about I mean, the timing was like, you're on your first lockdown, so talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, when it was released, I think it was like a week after we went into lockdown, and so and it was just so good that we dropped the whole series because people had time to watch it because there was nothing else to do. So I think that was a really good choice, you guys. Fluky choice, but yeah. And so I think that really played into the momentum of things, and it was all over social media. But great timing.
Yeah.
As I said, the show has definitely had a momentum and an energy to it that is greater than us. There's no master plan there that we came up with. That's the good Lord, or our ancestors, or whatever you call it. It's that was nothing to do with us.
Right. So I mean, now it's on its festival. Festival run. It had an international premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival. I know, Tom, you've had films there, a premiere in Toronto as well. What was and also of course here in Hawaii, what was the kind of I would say the reaction, an international reaction to the Polynesian Panthers story?
It was a double-edged sword going to Toronto, to be honest. It was cool that the show went there. It sucked that I couldn't go there because of these quarantine rules. But internationally, I think it's been quite hard because it's a lot. I've never been to Toronto, so my only experience of it was through Tom, who'd been there though through film, which then we learned was totally internationally. It just works different from TV and film, I guess. So what do you reckon, bro?
I just think, firstly, such an honor for us to have the show play in HIFF and TIFF. Just to be one of only a handful of series to play in those festivals. For us, that's just humbling recognition of the cinematic approach that we really wanted to take to this series. That was something we talked about with Miki a lot and Vea, and just testament to the director's work as well, that the film is shot and scored and produced in a manner that is befitting of a big screen. That's pretty cool. Not many TV shows get that opportunity. To be one of only 5 series to play in the Toronto Film Festival is an honor, such an honor. So yeah, super cool, and the reception has been great. There have been Demetrius, who popped his face on camera before, who played the character of Will. Of course, he was selected as one of the rising stars in the Toronto Film Festival program this year. Like, such a cool platform for him and the other on-screen talent. There have been lots of opportunities come off the back of the festival for mine and Nua's company Tawake and for the show. So we've got some pretty exciting international sales for the Panthers that we're going to be announcing soon. So yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think we'll get some questions from the audience. But if you have any questions for the Panthers team, please just put them in the comment section, Facebook or YouTube. So we have Figs 1B or 8. Have you guys had any trouble drawing a line between telling the story accurately versus dramatically telling the story to be fit for TV? I mean, I think maybe New Zealand television. I think the I guess the rating system must be different from American Puritan ratings and whatnot. But can you talk about that?
Oh, you go ahead, Doc.
I mean, for me, I didn't personally have trouble drawing a line because when I learned of the history, I'm not like an academic person in general, so I was just like, nah, man, we need to just get this out there to people, and then they can find out through their conversations with their grandparents or their parents, for example. And early on, kind of Tom and I kind of came up with the sugar and the medicine formula of telling the story, so that we can entice the audience with the sugar, and then we lace in the medicine as well, so that they do get that. They do get the medicine with the story, because it is such a big story. We can't just like fully get rid of the line and go, nah, none of this happened. But it was all like fictional, but it was very, very much like figuring out a way to go, like, the rappers, hip hop.
Oh, bro, you froze on your hip hop bars.
Listening to rap music,
right on the bars, man.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, you just got muted out for those bars of gold that you were dropping on us there, brother. We lost you.
Oh, man. It was so profound that it just came in as gold.
I know where you dropped out. So, but no, just to back up what Noah's saying, like, I think, like, for us, we didn't want to carry the sole sort of responsibility of giving a history lesson with the show. Like, it's a drama series, and our goal, first and foremost, as dramatic storytellers, is to compel and entertain and emotionally move the audience. And that's our skill set. There are other people who have the skill set of doing the more heavy lifting history work. But if we can at least deliver the story in a way that compels people to want to learn more about the history, I think that's a huge achievement. And that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're like you said, it's like you have to, your main goal is to entertain, compel, and also, there are things that you have to make dramatic license for. You have to make composite characters and whatnot. I mean, you don't have to kind of name names, but were people who lived that history, were they upset or irked? Like, it's not acting like this way or that way.
We haven't run into too much of those problems. I mean, I think, like, fundamentally we're pretty close to the truth of how it went down. And saying all that we just said, the show is heavily researched, and I always think with an adaptation, you should know the truth before you make careful decisions to move away from it. Sure. Or to give a more poetic interpretation. So no, we haven't come under too much heat in that way. Yeah. Maybe a few sly comments from the Muldoon camp, which is the prime minister that we depict in the Trump-esque kind of Muldoon that we see in there. But no, apart from that, we've been good.
Another question: have you promoted or made partnerships with Black American groups like history, social justice, or even entertainment groups like allies? Like maybe definitely from I assume from the international screenings that you've been having.
We haven't gone into that too much yet, but we will for the North American release of the series for sure. There's a real natural synergy there. Obviously, the Panthers were, were pretty much like founded off the back of the Black Panthers in the US. So there's always been this bilateral discussion between the two groups. So we would love to pick that up and run with it further, and we'll do for the American release.
Right. Another question. What other stories are you interested in telling, especially when it comes to Maori history and culture? Or maybe Polynesian stories in general?
Yeah, well, me personally, I want to, and like kind of, that's what the great thing is about our company now is like telling stories from our corner of the world. I'm not Maori, so it's not kind of really my place to be telling Maori stories, but definitely New Zealand stories, and kind of New Zealand that I grew up in is a bit of a melting pot for kind of all Polynesian cultures, which is kind of what we wanted to get across in the Panthers as well. Like, you know, it's that real multicultural Samoans, Tongans, Cook Islanders, Maori, Fijians, Niueans, all this kind of New Zealand Polynesian culture that we've kind of developed on ourselves. So telling stories from that lens that will kind of explore Maori themes and stuff, but not necessarily be out here telling the story of Te Rauparaha and how he came up with Kamati. Like, you know, not that, but definitely want to be telling stories that uplift and empower our young Polynesians and shine light on some of our heroes like the Polynesian Panthers that we don't know about, that do deserve their moment in the sun.
How about
what is exciting for us here in Aotearoa though is the fact that you know, there seems to be more of a drive to make our Pacifics / Indigenous Aotearoa stories. So, you know, currently there are productions in New Zealand which look at Māori history in particular. But, you know, it feels like right now is sort of the start of a new wave of stories that may be coming through with regards to Pacific stories. Man, it is hard to get any sort of film production off the ground / TV production off the ground, let alone a Pacific one. So hopefully this can open some more doors for us to tell those stories that, you know, those Pacific stories that we want to tell. There are plenty out there. You know, there's, you know, certainly from the Samoan perspective, there's Mau movements and there's all of these sorts of stories that are aching to come through, and perhaps we'll see them and hopefully see them in the near future.
Right. But you, Vea?
I guess.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, Vea.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a Tongan filmmaker, there's literally like a handful of Tongan films that have been made. So there is hundreds and hundreds of stories yet to be explored and told. And yeah, you know, like Miki was saying, it is extremely hard to get something off the ground. But I think, you know, like with the Panthers, when the stars align and the timing's right, then you just got to jump on it. So yeah, we've got stacks of stories. Eh, Noah?
Yes. Like I was just gonna say, like, that's one of the things that I know both Tom and I take a lot of pride in is the what we've been able to provide with Panthers. You know, being able to bring in Miki, Vea. You know, like I think over 80% of our HODs were Pacific, and many of us were jumping into these positions as first timers, and it's kind of a testament to and that's not saying that we weren't ready for it. We just hadn't been given an opportunity to show what we can do when we're caught into the game. So I know, like, we take a lot of pride as a team of like, this is what can be achieved when you give us a shot, and now there's just like a different level of confidence and swag to everyone that was involved in the show, you know, because we know we can do it now, like, you know, and we know what can be achieved when you just crack the whip and go, we're going to get it. We've got to do it. Keep questing and pushing for greatness, which is definitely kind of Tom was a big part of. Like, I was constantly scared, like, nah, we won't be able to do that. We can't afford the town hall. Yes, we can. Can't get 200 extras. Yes, we can. Thought my man was Barack Obama for a second there with all his yes we cans.
What was another question from the audience? What was the hardest part about filming the series? Maybe Tom, you can then. I'll just maybe a general thing.
Yeah, I think like to be honest, like in my career, like this project was one of the least difficult projects. Like, of course, it took a lot of commitment and hard work, and there's all the long hours and personal sacrifices that you make in your own life to put a show like this first for the period of time that you're making it, especially people who have kids and families to look after. Like it's there are a lot of sacrifices made in those areas. But honestly, like just the team that were making this show and the nature of which it was made, it wasn't as difficult as other experiences I've had. It was the most enjoyable experience of my career, and just a culturally different approach, a less hierarchical, more collaborative, more village approach, I guess, to making the show really meant that you never kind of felt like you were carrying the burden on your own. And I think sometimes with film, you might have one other person, the director and producer might sort of carry that burden, whereas on this, it felt like there was a family doing that. So that's for me.
Let's see because Tom, you're pretty much a veteran in the industry as actor and producer and whatnot. What do you see?
Are you saying I'm old, Anderson?
I'm older than you, dude. I'm older than you. So I checked your age. I'm much older than you. But just kind of like, what is? How do you see the outlook now with the industry, film and TV? So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like COVID has kind of changed the game in lots of ways. I think like obviously the theatrical market's been quite shut down for a long time, which has sent people to TV even more than ever, to the streamers, and has just further fed the revolution of television that was already happening even before TV. So before COVID, so we're in a golden age of television. Right. There's still brilliant, beautiful, independent film being made, but it's a lot harder for us to get films financed and made right now. It's kind of like, we've got a film that's about to go into production, but it has been one of the most difficult films ever to pull together. And I think that's just a reflection of quite a challenged, unstable, independent film market. But yeah, cinema is still like the love for me, like as an audience member, and festivals like the one that you guys are running. And I'm always just so grateful to people like yourself, to be honest, Anderson, who create forums for cinema lovers to see our films. And so thank you to you and the whole team and all the people who I'm sure volunteer to make the festival possible. And here's hoping that next year everyone can actually get back in the cinema, because that's what it's all about. And yeah, so that's my take on it. But yeah,
also having you here in Hawaii. I only met Vea and I hung out in LA a few years ago. It was a great time, but it's kind of like this whole pandemic thing. You guys should be here, right? So hopefully we can host you in future editions. As we hopefully this is not the new normal, and we can get back on track.
Oh man. Big time.
So okay, we have one more question from Desiree Finau.
Oh, Finau, eh?
Yeah.
That's my auntie.
Hey.
Yes, it's coming. That's coming. Don't worry. It'll be there, and I'll let you know.
Excited, looking for this to hit North America. Happy to hear it will make its way here. Okay, so that's perfect. That's a perfect ender, because that was going to be my last question. We're only showing the first 3 episodes in this festival, and you, Tom, announced that you're working on a North American deal. I'm sure it's still you can't make announcements yet. But how is it? Is it coming out soon? Is it coming? What's the timetable here?
Our lips are very tightly sealed. We're under the strictest of embargoes, but it will be 2022. Sorry to be so broad and unspecific.
Right.
But yeah, can't wait to share the film in North America. As we talked about, obviously such a huge influence, and in fact, the genesis of the Polynesian Panthers actually coming from the States. And then even for Noah and I, like, we're so, and I'm sure Vea and Miki as well, like, we're just so influenced by American culture and pop culture, and in this case, hip hop culture. And so there are just so many parts of the Panthers that were inspired by that part of the world. So we can't wait to share it up there. It'd be awesome.
Well, again, thank you so much to the Panthers team for making such a compelling, amazing TV series. And I personally was very excited to include this in the festival, and I'm glad we did. And then because it's kind of like again, shows what is happening in Aotearoa, especially when it comes to Pacifica stories and whatnot, and like especially for the kind of close knit kind of local Hawaii community here, film community, we all look towards Aotearoa for inspiration. So again, thank you to Miki Magasiva, Vea Mafile'o, Halaifonua Finau, and Tom Hern for being a part of this this panel discussion for the Panthers. I mean, and I want to also thank Neotero and Pacific Islands and Communications PIC for sponsoring this panel, but also the section as well. And if you are interested in more the talks about amplifying Pacifica stories and filmmaking, I urge everyone to check out the Kin Theory panel that we're having tomorrow at noon Hawaii time. That's also sponsored by Neotero, and it's going to be a bunch of panelists from different First Nations talking about kind of like their craft and also amplifying Pacifica stories in particular. So without further ado, thank you again, team, the Panthers team, for joining us, and we can't wait to tell more, to show more of your stories at the Hawaii International Film Festival. So on behalf of HIFF, mahalo for your work, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Anderson. And just wanted to give a quick shout out to the real Polynesian Panthers down here in Aotearoa. Always just like to give them a little mihi, because without, you know, the privilege of being able to tell their story for screen, we wouldn't be here, obviously, and wouldn't have gone on this special epic journey. So yeah, props to those guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nani says, yeah, I cannot wait. Aloha and mahalo, Vea and all. You have a lot of friends here, Vea.
I know. I'm so disappointed not to come to Hawaii next year.
Next year. All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Aloha, Pito.
Bye-bye.